Yes, let's cheers again so we can hear each other. Okay.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Okay.
Yeah, but I totally agree with you. I mean, it was only I don't know, 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago we were in London. So it's amazing just for everywhere as well. I mean, it's all around the world.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we did talk about this a little bit. And so, from my background is intelligent systems. That's where I did my did my PhD in this. I was one of the founders of a thing called the Intelligent Systems Lab at University College London, and I set up my first business from that. A couple of colleagues, and we had a very successful business where we were using all of these very, very new machine learning techniques for high volume transaction monitoring. And that business was eventually there was an exit from that. And it was acquired by a US private equity group that were looking at it as an outsource a platform for outsource compliance. And so I met blueprism in 2007, and I think there was 10 people in the company at the time, and we were probably had about £30,000 worth of revenue that was coming our way. Other than that, we had a gap in terms of how we were going to pay for ourselves and what we were going to do. But as I said to you when we met up in London, the thing that absolutely jumped out a mile was how interesting the technology was, and just where it kind of led. And as you and I well know, at core of it, they'd solved a problem that had been at the center of all of us in IT for so many years, and that was the inability of systems to interoperate with each other. And if you talk to most organizations in terms of the blockages, how do you get an automation to take place? How do you put a new process in place? It's always the interoperability between one system and another system. And so I turned up in 2007 in Newton Le Willows, and I meet Alistair Bathgate and Dave Moss, and pretty well, they've got a solution for it. And what really impressed me was the way that they'd done it. They'd taken a very, very smart approach and basically approached it totally differently from everybody else. And if you looked at the enterprise application integration technologies that existed at the time, they were all very deep. They're all very deep layers within the data models and the databases. There was all these kind of star schemas and methods for trying to join data sets together. And what Dave had done was basically, to say, just don't do any of that, and repurpose the user interface as a machine interface. And he and Kieran, kind of the main engineer at the time, they've gone about building this thing in that way, making it so that, as I say, you repurpose this user interface and as a machine interface. And more than that, they'd also put a way of building automations around the use of that kind of interoperability. And so, the first thing that struck me was just the cleverness in terms of how it sidesteps so many issues and made so many things possible. And I saw that, I appreciated that from a technical perspective. And then it was later when I saw customers actually using the product, where it suddenly became very clear to me that it wasn't really the technical aspect of this product that was most impressive. It was the way that it took out technology to a brand new audience, a brand new non-technical audience that could interoperate with these digital workers as they become in a very intuitive way. And so, from the very first beginning, it seemed like it was a very powerful technology, and we spent the next number of years, really trying trying to get people to see it, take it seriously, and see it really how far it could go. And it was over that time that this phrase, robotic process automation, ended up being created. And I think that it was something that really came about in collaboration with the customers and the users. That it was a phrase that they always talked about them as robots because it was like a robotic person, and it was like a software robot. And that's how people thought about this technology, and that's how they were using it. And so eventually it came about, and then I think it's we're talking about 2016, 2017, when things really started to take off.
Yeah. So something changed 3 years ago, 4 years ago, more or less.
Yeah, and to the best of our analysis, we think that it was that market analysts started to pick up on the fact that this very, very early stage, or this very new technology, this very emerging technology, as they saw it, was a alternative to business process outsourcing, which of course it is.
Yeah.
And at the time, we had been trying to convince the BPOs that this is a strategic technology. It's something that they should embrace. It meant that it was a much, much wider pool of individuals that could end up using this technology. It was a much wider use case in terms of the way that you could use it. And so we thought there was a very natural fit for them as a sector. But instead, what happened was lots of commentators basically said this really puts an end to the outsourcing logic. Why would you do it if your own operations people can actually operate this technology themselves? And basically from that point, the market really started to take off.
Yeah.
It doesn't surprise me at all. I think that the people though that really stand to benefit from this technology are the non-technical operations staff.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I still think we're in very early days of this kind of RPA revolution, and that people are still discovering that. And so, often we see deployments where the technology is really being used as a IT-based technology. And so, and sometimes that can be offshored as well. And so they send it to kind of offshore centers to within their own organization to have an automation built. And when you think of the overhead associated with that, the cost of the communication, the cost of the documentation, it's all the old supply chains that you used to have associated with traditional large-scale IT projects. Yeah. And when you're talking about thousands of business processes that potentially want automating, the business cases don't stack up for that. That's just not the way that you should use the technology. It's not you don't get the maximum out of it by having it in that configuration. So I still think there's a long way to go. People are still tuning in to really where's the benefit. Putting this in the operations hands, allowing the operations teams to really sit close to their digital workers, to be in charge of the digital workers, building those resources and then reusing them, as they see fit.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of inevitable, really. And, we're obviously, early to this technology. And so, you have that period of time when it's almost exclusive. Very few people know about it. And, we see it much better than other people do in terms of what it's about. But when you think of what this technology is really talking to, it's talking to this much wider community. That's the whole purpose of it. It's trying to embrace, these non-technical users and bring them in an intuitive way so that they can build digital workers, they can apply them, they can use them in their business. And so the whole purpose is that many people start to see this that didn't otherwise. And I think from the technical community, it makes too much sense, that if you think of your own platform, if your platform is produced and it doesn't have these kind of capabilities associated with it, it sort of feels like it's a bit static. It doesn't have any kind of dynamic operations. Everybody wants to use these things in a dynamic way. They want to interoperate them. There's going to be no monolithic supplier of one capability that's going to serve the whole world. And so the interoperation, the fact that you want to do automations, I think this is a kind of the new world. And I think that the large platform providers, it's only a matter of moments before all of them have to have some kind of RPA component associated with what they do. And so I think we're going to see a lot more. So if we're getting a new one a week, maybe maybe a new one a day, or it's just the normal. It comes with everything that basically provides a service.
Yeah.
As well.
Yeah.
I mean, I think and to stay on the top, I think maybe it's not the top. What we're saying is, as always, we've got to be relevant for our customers. We got cut off. But you were asking about how do we stay, how do we stay relevant, really? And so and that's the point. It's how do you stay relevant to customers? And I think that it's about the kinds of expertise in the digital workers. What is it these robots are capable of doing? The formations of them. How reusable their skills are, how interoperable they are with other capabilities, and to really, to follow through on the mission that we've started. And so, I see that as a advantage that we have, but I also see it as kind of a massive. There's massive scope here in terms of what it is that we can offer, how relevant it is to end customers. And just how much further we've got to go. We're trying to build these digital workers. We want them to be as intelligent as they possibly can. We want them to be, as good as a human worker. We want them to excel from human workers where they can. We want people to be able to exceed their businesses, their sort of business requirements and expectations. And so I just see so much scope in all of that. And when I hear about automating, routine tasks and mundane tasks, that I think is trivial. It's a much more interesting stuff in terms of the way that it really transforms a business and the way that you use these things at scale.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, that's a good set of categories. So I'm going to start with the people that haven't started. I think for those guys, they need to get on. That would be my honest, candid advice to them. If you talk to anybody in operations who's experienced this type of technology, I'm not saying for blueprism, I'm saying this type of technology, they can see that the world's changed. This is the way that operations is going to take place. It's more efficient than human beings. Human beings enjoy the workplace much better when they use this kind of technology. It means that all of the kind of execution tasks are delegated to the robots, and people think about much more interesting things. They do all the interesting design work and the thinking work associated with what it is they do. And so for those guys, they really do need to start thinking that it's a technology they need to become familiar with, understand the limitations, understand where it's going, and join the conversation. So for them, I think they should get underway. And my advice is not to start too small. I think that too often people say, well, I get one robot and I just try one robot. And it's, well, you don't really see anything with one robot. You should be starting with a reasonable number. At one time, we would only, the minimum we would offer is 10. And I still think that's at least a decent number. If you're running a division or you're running a reasonable sized organization, I think that you probably want to experiment with this at around the 20 level. You want to put some kind of commitment to say, how do we find this? How do we get it to work? And the way that I would get confident about doing that is I would go to, I would talk to people that have used it. There are many people that are prepared to do that. There are many case studies that you can see. There are many virtualized case studies you can see as well. And when you start looking at how intuitive it is, really what's associated with it, and you can make many barriers in your mind, you know, say, well, we do a lot of paperwork, we do complex differentiated processes. Really, there are answers to all of those things these days. And I think finding a good partner, you know, to guide you through some of the thinking, but then you should be getting underway. That really, to me, I think is important. If you want to be in business in a number of years' time, this is a technology you have to become familiar with. For the guys that have tried it and have struggled, I think again, you know, where I would say here is that, look, you know, first of all, great job. You're in. You know, you can see what it is this thing is trying to do. And I think that you know, that the pattern that we see often is really using the technology as a surrogate for IT, you know, rather than something that empowers their business operations team or is integrated as part of their business operations teams. And so, you know, again, that there are emerging specialists in the partner community, emerging kind of specialist service work that can help people think through, are they using the technology in the right way? Are they thinking about it in terms of the kinds of processes that you should be operating? How much embedded it should be within your operations teams. And I think that, again, you know, that there are some really master users of this technology now. There are companies out there that are really flying with it. And if you talk to them, if you see them, if you go to the events where they're talking, I think you really get a sense in terms of how they've transformed their organization. And you know, that it's just different. What, you know, once it's something that's really embedded within the business. And so, you know, I think they can help you, and they can help you figure out maybe some of the places where there have been missteps, or it just hasn't really been adopted in the right way. You know, we can't trivialize this stuff. I mean, you know, it's just like when you bring in an employee. You know, if you don't train the employee properly, if you don't have the right structure for them to work, it's, you know, it's not the right relationship. And as a business, it's unsatisfying for you know, for the organization. It's just the same for the digital workforce. It has to be thought through. And then your final category. What was the final category? I've forgotten.
The final category is the company that already started. It had some project in progress, but stopped.
Oh, but they're frozen. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that for the guys that are under, you know, a freeze for the moment, I think that they're again, you know, this is just such an extraordinary time, and this is where, you know, I think us as suppliers and clients, you know, we get creative in terms of the kinds of things they can do. One area that you can do, particularly with blueprism, is that you can optimize the way that the robots work, and you can spend more time thinking about how those automations actually take place. You can reuse objects. You can redesign some of the processes, and so in which case you get more utilization out of your existing robots. You can make certain that you're looking at your scheduling so that you know, that they're not spending too much time on slow processes, that they run them at the optimum time, and that you regain time that you could be using for other processes that you want to run at the same time. And I would just getting smart. And again, I think, you know, when we were talking before about this sort of human worker analogy, it's the same thing. You know, if you've got the same amount of resource, a little bit more creativity, a little bit more ingenuity, you know, in terms of what it is that you can get these robots to do. And you could even, you know, talk to the folk in IT. You can look at rescheduling some of the downtime associated with the overnight you know, batches, and closing those windows a little bit, giving you more processing time. you can distribute on more processing resource that's out on your infrastructure to get a little bit more horsepower in terms of things that can take place. So I think there's a lot of things you can do. You can anticipate that when things return, what are the kinds of processes that you're going to be running? How to have them ready, to have them there available, like to switch into action as soon as it takes place. I think is all stuff that probably everybody is should be thinking about, and I think it's another area where you can get very far ahead in terms of things that are going to become relevant. Hopefully, not so far in the future.
I hope to see you soon, face to face. Hopefully in the next months. Probably after summer.
Probably a bit longer, yeah. I mean, but hopefully soon. And yeah, I'm not sure we'll be in touch via email. And
yeah,
it was a very good idea to do this.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thanks again. And
all right, thank you. Have a good evening.
You too. Bye.
All right, cheers.